right, we're all friends here, so it's 3-on-1.
There we go.
We don't really know you.
We're going to ask you questions, actually.
There you go. All right. Well, guys, thanks so much for being here. Everyone, my name is Mike Sherbakov, as I mentioned, general partner at the Veteran Fund. We invest in early stage companies, veterans on the leadership team building critical technologies. I'd love to hand it over to the panelists and introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about their companies, please.
Hey, everyone. My name's Steve Simone. I run a company called Allen Control Systems. We make AI guns, like an autonomous machine gun. It's a vision-based gun that detects, tracks, identifies, and defeats the targets. Prior to that, I built a company that I sold to DoorDash in 2022. So I've been doing some entrepreneur stuff for about 10 years now.
The king of QR codes, by the way, is Steve.
Thank you. QR code guy.
Hey, guys. My name's Will Edwards. I'm the founder and CEO of Firehawk Aerospace. What Firehawk has done is we've created a propellant that allows us to produce rocket propellant or any sort of energetics in about 3 to 6 hours when the industry standard needs about $1 billion facility and 15 to 60 days to produce it. So essentially what we do is we form little pellets out of energy, ammonium perchlorate, and then we 3D print it into the shape that we need. So we're based out of Dallas, Texas. We're working on contracts with the Air Force, Army, some different primes, and yeah, that's it. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Love it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Naveed Tomas. I started a company called Aeon. We build the world's most advanced tactical weapon systems to
Speak up.
Let's try round 2. I got hecklers on stage with me. My name is Naveed Tomas. I founded a company called Aeon. We build the world's most advanced tactical weapon systems to ensure that our warfighters remain the most lethal force in the world. I just also want to thank everybody for coming to our talk and for Emerge for setting this up. I never thought I'd be speaking at the same conference as Pitbull, but mark that off my bucket list. And I don't know who decided to choose Miami as the place to throw a conference, because I don't know if anyone's gotten any sleep last night.
No.
All right, so let's kick it off with question 1. We'll stay with you. And my question is, what role do autonomy and additive manufacturing play in strengthening U.S. defense industrial base? And how has that changed specifically over the last few years?
That's a great question. The way I see autonomy is, how do we increase soldier survivability? How do we get them away from the front lines of combat as much as possible? The additive manufacturing component enables us to build much faster than having to depend on bespoke custom components, because the thing that China is beating us on right now is just their massive scale. And in order for us to get to that level, we need companies like Will's that could quickly build solid rocket motors that expands the defense industrial base. And then you combine that scale with advanced capabilities to enable our warfighters to be more powerful, to obtain that overmatch, and to get them out of harm's way. That's ultimately everything we're doing at our company. I know for Will and Steve as well, is getting those soldiers outside, those warfighters outside of those front lines to increase the distance of engagement. And the way you do that is through autonomous systems that could go and think on their own, find targets, hunter-killer modes, or at the very least, a human in the loop that doesn't actually have to be in that trench over there, right?
Will, do you mind adding a little bit to that, maybe talking about specifically how it's changed over the last several years?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say one of the most important things with additive manufacturing is being able to produce on the edge. So right now, there's a huge supply chain issue. And when we have soldiers and allies overseas, it's really hard to get the equipment that they need. So if you can actually have a miniature factory, a couple hundred miles away from the actual battlefield, and produce the propellants, the energetics, the missile systems near the actual conflict, that's a supply chain game changer. And that's something that like additive manufacturing has really allowed us to become capable of just in the past few years.
And then just continuing to build that, Steve, like how is your company specifically leveraging rapid deployment cycles to stay competitive and kind of meet the evolving needs of the defense national security?
I don't know if we really are, to be honest. Like, we're about 3 years into product development. It's a very complex product. It's like an art project, We're not like trying to speedily build the world's best gun turret. This takes some time to build these complex robotics. So I would say, we're trying to build the best possible product. How long it takes is just how long it takes. I know investors don't always want to hear that, but if it's going to be really a game changer, the Switchblade, they've been doing the Switchblade at AeroVironment for 20 years now. Like they've been iterating on that product. It's like the best loitering munition, but it's not about like rapid, quick innovation. It's about like building something really awesome that helps the warfighter. So, I mean, that's what we're doing, trying to do, and we try to capitalize the business in a way that we have the time to do it.
All right. And if it's not the timeline necessarily that's a challenge, what specifically for you are some of the biggest challenges you're facing then?
Well, there are no real we're creating a market. So there's no vision-based guns out there. Like if you survey the military, like most guns on vehicles are turret or joystick controlled. So to switch from something that's joystick controlled by an 18-year-old soldier to having the AI point the gun and shoot it, that's an education thing. That takes time. It's a new type of innovation. So I think that's probably one of the major, frank challenges. Other than that, it's very hard to build. So just making sure you have enough runway to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to ask you that same question too. What are the biggest challenges you're facing currently?
So the United States, one thing that they do incredibly well, one of many things, is their supply chain is unbelievable. So they've been making rocket propellant the same way for the past 50 to 75 years. And what they do now is they mix it in these huge mixers. They pour that mixture into a mold. They put that mold into an oven and essentially cures for 15 to 60 days. And then it goes through quality control. And they use a different material, a different binder to keep all the energetics together. We're coming to the military with a new binder and a new way to produce rocket propellant. It's the same result. Actually, you get better performance. You get it much quicker. But there are people who are ingrained with they've been working for so long in the government that it's really hard to convince them to change how you do one thing. And it's not just one small thing. Like this is a key part of the industrial base. Making rocket propellant and energetics it's the foundation of the industrial base. So while we do have a lot of support, one of the big pitfalls we sometimes come into is a guy saying like, we're not going to change how we make rocket propellant. We don't care if it works the same way or if it's faster. We're going to keep working with the two companies that we've already given $10 billion to over the past decade or so.
You're a madman.
Outside of recovering from a night out in Miami, what are some of the biggest challenges you are facing right now?
All right, Mike. All right. Watch it, bro. We should have had you out with us last night.
I would piggyback off what Will said. Having open, innovative partners in the government. Sam from Army Application Labs is here. He's been our greatest champion. When we first started the company. Same with Will and Steve as well. Is they're open to innovative approaches that break the mold. And so it's finding those champions. You're going to talk to 95% of people. They're not going to be interested or supportive, or they're going to doubt you. They're like, no way, it's always been this way. But you got to find those 5%. Of believers. The other challenge is, we're introducing the first new tactical missile system in 30 years, right? And a lot of what I see as the issue, the reason why I started this company is there should not be any warfighters or ground operators that are depending on unguided weapon systems. You were a Marine, the AT-4 and the Carl Gustaf and all of these systems. They are great systems. But in the modern era, we should not be depending on unguided weapon systems. And so the challenge I see is, one, breaking the conventional norm about these things. But then from a regulatory standpoint, China goes through their qualification process with their weapon systems much faster than the US. US can take a decade to qualify your weapon system, a missile system. And by the time you've got that finished, it's already outdated. And you got to go through another upgrade. And it's just this constant, it's great for the companies, but it's not great for the warfighter.
All right, we're going to get into some of the spicier questions. We're going to increase the spice scale here. All right, so with the rise of autonomous systems in modern warfare, how do you balance that speed of innovation you're talking about, where China's doing it faster, with safety, ethics, reliability? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't see it as like either or. You could move fast and also do it safely. And I think the way you do it is, one, a lot of the qualification process we're talking about is not in the real world. It's like you drop your rocket from 10 feet. That's firsthand. Soldiers are not dropping something from 10 feet. That thing's being kicked around, and then when they give it to the guys actually in the field, they don't work as well because they were never designed to go through an actual, truly safe qualification standard. The other standpoint when it comes to the safety and qualification is that there's a lot of standards that have nothing to do with safety, right? And let's say you go through the certification or qualification process for your weapon system, and there's like some minor change you have to make. You have to go through another like 3-6 month review board. And then even if you know what the problem is and you go out and you show, like, hey, look, we fixed it, you just have to go through this like really long, cumbersome process. So I think the way that you do this is, one, be diligent in how you make your systems. Do as much testing as possible before getting it out there. When we're talking about any of our systems, we go to our ranges and we test them all the time to make sure they're safe. So that's how I would factor both is you don't need 10 years to qualify a weapon system. Let's go through and see what are the critical safety standards we have to hit and then cut the fluff out of it. If there are minor things that don't really matter, don't make sense, they should not be in the qualification standpoint. Because the reason why we see China, a lot of their advanced weapon systems, is because a lot of our cool advanced weapon systems are still through the qual process right now. And so I think a lot of testing, being very diligent in your development, is the way we could square both of those. And a lot of testing and iteration.
Yeah. Stephen, I'm curious if you have any additional insights on kind of as you're building these systems, how do you balance, no, it's not necessarily the speed you're talking about, but how do you balance it with safety, ethics, and reliability?
Yeah, so we test weekly, on the range. Those aren't the same tests. We got to shoot that drone down. That drone's flying around. That's the adversary. No, actually, seriously, they make about 1 drone per second in China. We're at a massive manufacturing deficit with our greatest adversary. If a war were to break out today, we are definitely behind, and it's because of stuff like this. Like, it is too cumbersome. There's a reason for it all. Obviously, like, I used to be in the Navy. I was a nuclear engineer. I wrote requirements for the Virginia-class submarines. Like, I understand that these are really dangerous systems. These are weapons of war. So you have to have a lot of testing. I get all of that. But we do need to infuse a little bit of agility into this. And so, we're doing our testing. We try to match what we think that testing will be future when you're doing qualifications, like final qualifications to make your product live with the military. So we're trying to just front run all of that. Obviously, there's going to be things we didn't think of, and you just have to be ready to pour money on it and do it as fast as possible once you get that feedback. Yeah.
Will, question for you. What tech or trends are you excited about that you think are going to kind of further transform your specific industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
3D printed rocket propellant. I think that's going to change everything. So we are going to change how the United States has produced rocket propellant for decades. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, we're taking a 15 to 60 day process down to 3 to 6 hours. We'll be able to produce anything you want, like overseas. Like, if you wanted a drone with an exploding chassis, where like the quadcopter, the base of that was made out of our material, we can now make a drone where it's literally just a flying bomb just in itself. So I think the advancements in our material science, working with different companies that are making 3D printers, is going to change the game. It's going to change again the foundation of the industrial base. That's printing energetics. You don't need $1 billion facility. We could produce dozens of systems out of something the size of this stage, powered by a generator. And so, like Naveed said, there's a lot of stuff we have to go through to be safe, but I do appreciate Army application labs. They wanted to work with us. They had a good vision. They quickly came out to our range, and they watched some of our tests to make sure that we're actually working on something. And then we have great monthly meetings with them, either at our site or online. And so I think that with groups like that being willing to support what we're doing, that's going to be the most exciting change in defense. How much money do we need? I mean, so we've raised, tens of millions of dollars so far, but if you were to build a new propellant facility that's capable of producing, say, 100,000 pounds of propellant a year, you're going to be spending $100 to $250 million. For us to produce about 1 million pounds of propellant a year, we're looking at closer to $20 to $30 million.
Game changer.
All right.
Okay.
I would also say I would also
the
say,
hustle.
thank you. I would also say that when you ask an entrepreneur how much money do they need, the answer is never enough. You always want more capital to deploy. Like if you think you can deploy it efficiently, you want to deploy it. So, that's the answer.
All right, Naweed, question for you now. When we started, my partners and I started the Veteran Fund 4 years ago, we came out with this thesis, and one of the first investments we made was into a company called Firestorm that Dan Magee and Chad McCoy run. And as we were kind of parallel processing, raising and deploying at the same time, we had raised a little bit, started deploying, raising more, deploying. And a lot of the feedback that we got from LPs at that time was, I don't do defense investing. And historically, Silicon Valley hasn't really done that. In fact, there was kind of a negative, lens at which everyone was looking through it. Now, I feel like we're kind of on the opposite side where it feels like there's a little bit of this bubble that some people would call it. What are your general thoughts? It's a two-part question on kind of the investing in defense. And second, what would you say to people that have historically been opposed to investing in defense, saying, I don't want to put money into things that go boom?
Stop being stupid. But the first one I will say is when I started the company now 2 years ago, it was initially very difficult to raise capital because a lot of these VCs had weapons clauses. They couldn't invest in weapon systems. That has changed a lot. You're seeing a lot more kinetic companies coming out now because a lot of these investors and these companies realize the real funding and what the government's really interested in is things that actually go boom and can defeat targets. So that's a big thing. And obviously, as a missile company, we're not dual use, right? Unless one day we'll sell it, I don't know, to people I want to mad at their neighbors or something. But
can you explain dual use for anyone in the audience that doesn't know what that means?
Oh yeah, dual use is, there's not just a military application, there's also a commercial application as well, right? There is no commercial application yet for missile systems. But my response to a lot of those investors and a lot of those people that are very focused on dual use is, as a small company, you can't fight two battlefields and two wars at the same time. Commercial and defense are highly capital intensive and complex markets to navigate. You are splitting your marketing, you are splitting your engineering, you are splitting everything in your company in half versus going all out. And the big example that a lot of dual use investors talk about is, well, you need to be both military and commercial, is like, well, look at GPS and look at the internet. Those all started with military first intentions. And then they were like, all right, well, let's give this to the people, the masses now. And so that's my response to a lot of them. And look, defense is a great industry to invest in. I think what ultimately matters as a great defense founder is you have to have the skill of complex coordination. There are so many different moving parts beyond just the investment side. You have Congress, you have customers, and even Congress itself is the game and understanding how this works and engaging them first. And that's the successful defense tech companies are the ones that understand that, how to bring money to your customer by being able to work with these different partners, such as Congress. But anyway, my answer to them is you can't fight two wars at the same time. Look at what history tells you.
Yeah. Stephen, same question for you. What do you say to people that don't invest in defense or haven't historically done it? And two, do you think we're in a defense tech bubble?
A bubble, huh? Okay, if you're an early stage investor, your job is to predict the future. And I'm imagining all of this money is rushing into defense because investors are assuming in the next 5 years conflict around the world is going to increase. I assume this because if they thought conflict wasn't going to increase, why would they put all this money into the space? That would be ridiculous. So they're placing bets, they're gambling. That's what they do. That makes sense, and they're trying to get ahead of it. So that's why I think the money's coming in. Because otherwise, why is the money coming in? It makes no sense. So that's what I would say, and it's a very hard job being an investor. And I think the main thing you need to do to be successful at it is you have to make a few concentrated bets, and then the one that starts to win, you need to back up the truck and keep your ownership target. I mean, that's the best way to do this. And so, you're seeing that with some of the scaling defense tech companies now and the investors doing that. But, that's what I would do. I'm not an investor, but that's what I would do.
And I'll just add to it for the folks in the audience that don't know about this. Obviously, there are firms like ours that are investing in great companies and founders like the ones on stage here. But also, as funds, we have new opportunities for LP capital. As of last year, in fact, earlier this year, there was the first cohort announced, the partnership between the Office of Strategic Capital and the SBA, where they're actually investing in early stage VC firms as taking LP positions in these funds in the 14 critical technology areas. So in addition to our traditional LP base, this is obviously an initiative that the US government said we want to invest. They have nearly $7 billion that they're putting to work into funds like ours so that we can find incredible founders and companies like this and invest in them. So on that note, question on like talent. How do you, and Will, I'll start with you, how do you build and retain top tier technical talent? We were talking about that a little bit before the start of the panel here, in a fast moving kind of mission critical sector.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to the last question though. I don't think we're in a bubble for defense tech exits. There are a lot of companies out there that haven't ever raised a dollar that are doing $1.25 billion in revenue, or they're exiting for billions of dollars. You've never heard of these guys. They're just quietly working, and some of them are 200-person companies. I think that the only bubble that could be created is if VCs get overzealous, overvalue companies, and they kill defense investing like they killed space investing. That happened really rapidly. We saw billion-dollar space companies come out of nowhere, and most of them are dead now. And if that happens in defense, it's the VC's fault and it's the founder's fault for accepting it. But there's a real world where we could build dozens and dozens and dozens of new defense unicorns if we're just responsible. And part of being responsible is getting good talent. So,
nice bridge.
Great sense.
We located our company in Dallas, Texas, because I'm around Lockheed, I'm around Raytheon, Textron, they're Elbit, Bell. They're amazing companies around us. And while we have a good mixture of the really young, hungry engineer that's willing to work 7 days a week, we also have that experience of the 40, 50, 60-year-old who has worked on these programs for decades. They know where the big flaws are. They know what to avoid. And most importantly, they have that network. That network allows us to expedite some of the problems we're facing. So I can lean, if I'm working on a new program, one of my presidents or VP of engineering is yeah, I know that colonel, or I know that PM. I did this with them at NAMO or Raytheon or Lockheed or wherever I was. So you have to really invest in hiring amazing people, but people who also build good relationships over their careers. And
Will, does it help that you look like Tom Brady?
All right, that's
too much.
That's too much.
No, it's true.
Wait, question for
true, though.
Same question for you. How are you recruiting that top technical talent looking like Tom Brady?
Yeah, I don't have Will's good facial bone structure, unfortunately. But something I wanted to quickly touch on as well as the previous question is, I don't know how long VCs are going to stick around in this space. I think long term is probably going to be a lot more family offices that are patriotic, that understand. And to your point about this industry and the space, there's a lot of room to modernize a lot of the things the government and the DoD. There's a lot of outdated and old systems. And so there is a massive opportunity to do that.
Can you just double click on that? Why do you think VCs won't stick around, family offices as well?
I didn't hear what you said. What?
Why do you think VCs won't stick around?
I think they're probably looking at some of these inflated valuations. I think they're still waiting for that first big exit or IPO from a fund. And then VCs naturally, they see defense is a hard industry. That's why I said a lot of founders think I'm just going to build a better product, right? And I'm just going to be able to go sell it right away, easy. No, it's a lot more that goes into it. There's a game behind every industry, and understanding the game of defense is it's relationship driven. It's trust driven, especially as a new startup. Understanding how to navigate things. But for VCs, I think maybe they may be impatient because this is an industry that takes a little bit longer to kind of hit, right? A lot of the big space is somewhat coming back now because some of those space companies, like the last one I worked at, Umbra, it took them almost 10 years to hit that point where they could launch satellites, and now they're crushing it. So when it comes to being technical talent, I know we only have 2 minutes, is being hyper aggressive. So, our best GNC engineer who leads it for us, guidance, navigation, control systems, makes the missile guide itself hit the target. He was the lead GNC guidance, navigation, control engineer at Skunkworks, Lockheed's advanced programs. And he's like, look, I don't know if I can move here. It's going to take me some time, blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, here's Airbnb. Pick your house. Like, I will pay for you to like just live out here right away so you get started. You just have to be aggressive. You have to go find those people. You got to bang on those doors, and you got to close them. Rick is our chief program officer. I had to work him, but he's a killer. He's awesome. But you just got to find those people, sell them the mission, and show that you're willing to do things differently and that you care about them, that you're willing to go above and beyond to get them to work at the company.
That's a perfect segue into the final question. 40 seconds each to answer this, which is, we'll start, Steve, with you. We have a lot of founders in the audience. What is one piece of advice, the final closing question that you have for founders?
If you're starting a startup and it's just you, no one cares about your startup. It's just the truth. And you need to give yourself 36 months till initial traction. If you do it sooner than that, then you're ahead of the curve. But you need to have that mental space for at least 3 years till the initial first little bit of success.
Will, parting wisdom, what advice do you have for founders?
So fundraising is always going to be one of your hardest things. One of the things that I learned, I saw all these people raising a lot of money, but I discounted the relationships that they had with these funds or that their investors had with them. So take a lot of time to build sincere relationships with the capital allocators. And if they say no to you at first, like we had a couple investors say no to us over 2 rounds, and they came in on the 3rd round because we built trust, we built a relationship. And also we had like that 36 months to show that we are seriously building something. So don't be too offended if you get turned down. Try to always build that relationship.
Bring us home. The Marina Me is going to end us right on time.
30 seconds. So I agree with both of them, Steve. Yeah, no one cares. You could bring the coolest product in the world. Everyone's gonna be like, all right, cool. Who cares? So what? You got to align, as I learned from Steve, incentives. Get them interested. Why should they work with you? Does it make them look good? Does it give them a promotion? Whatever. 2, don't lie to yourself. A lot of founders have a hard time confronting the truth about reality. You know, a big thing is when you talk to a lot of customers, they will be like, you know, a lot of people are like, this is awesome, great stuff, right? And you start like believing your own hype, but you have to always be objective in reality and like hyper self-aware. And you can't depend on anybody to do your work for you. You can't hire a consultant. You can't hire anybody else. You got to get in the weeds every day. You're not going to hire it out to people. You got to be involved in every single aspect of the business as a founder. Just keep the pedal to the metal.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you all. Let's give them all a big round of applause. Thank you all so much,
Thanks,
the audience,
Mike.
for joining us. Appreciate you guys.